go.
Scenario. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It's Monday, July 15th, 2024. And I'm a scenario guy. I try to plan everything, think about everything, be organized in my thoughts. As you heard last week, both on Nothing Personal, maybe on Levitard's show, certain quirks have me preparing for certain things. Went into this weekend, as always, finished the Friday show thinking about Monday's show. Start preparing. I'm acutely aware of what's happening during the course of this weekend and thinking about what would lead the show. It could have been Wimbledon. It could have been the draft, the home run derby, previewing the home run derby. I was thinking I'm going to watch the Copa final and the Euro final, so those could end up being leads. Maybe we'll talk about the Summer League in Vegas, see what happens with Bronny. So I have all these things written down. Then you get word that there's a death. Dr. Ruth passes away, so you think about that. And then Richard Simmons and then Shannon Doherty, so you think about those things as possible leads. All sorts of scenarios are coming into my head. There is no scenario about a text that I got at 6:15 p.m. on Saturday evening, which was a simple text. Someone saying Trump was shot. Yes? And my response, what do you think? What would your response be to that text? My response was twofold. One, I went to Twitter, and two, I turned on the TV. And there was nothing. My response immediately at 6:16 was no. Then at 6:19 p.m., I texted back to this person, turn on your TV. That's when the scenarios all changed. I understand the criticism. I do. We're here to talk about sports. You're here for your escape. You're here to hear about my sports business takes. No interest in politics. There's nothing political that I'm going to talk about right now. On the other hand, I think that you should be here for intellectual discourse. I think you should be here to think and be tested, be prodded, be pried, be thoughtful, be engaged, be inquisitive. That's what I want you to be here for, and that's what I want to be here for. It's what Coke and I talk about all the time. What the original goal was of the show. Is it every day that we talk about the Second Amendment, or we talk about Roe v. Wade, or we do a show about gun control? No, but there are going to be events that take place that will be discussed on this show. Doesn't matter who calls me, doesn't matter who texts me, it doesn't matter who tweets at me. Trying to make sure, be careful. Don't talk about it. People don't want to hear it. What were you thinking when you saw an assassination attempt? Because the overwhelming majority of the audience, not overwhelming, 55 to 60% of you weren't alive in 81. That was the last assassination attempt on a sitting president. My lifetime, which started in 1968, I don't remember when Martin Luther King got assassinated or RFK. Assassinations have been happening. You learn about it in school. You keep track of presidents who got assassinated. It's almost like something that's in the back of your head. You see Secret Service. You understand protecting political candidates. And then you look at other countries and you get news from time to time. People running for office in Mexico, gunned down, shot down. You look at it and you say, pass the broccoli. Did you do that yesterday? Saturday night when you found out that there was an assassination attempt, you just say, all right, and go on with your day? I couldn't. I took a beat. One of the other things that I do, of course, when things like this happen is one of my first thoughts is to call Coca, talk to him about it, where my head is. He's incredibly good at knowing me, letting time pass, being thoughtful in his responses and considerations. This was a tough one. I waited a minute and then tweeted my thoughts, and my thoughts have evolved even since that initial response when I begged people not to politicize this. And then I saw the responses from the left, from the right, the shameful responses to the assassination attempt. How could he miss? People on the left were saying, not normal people. This was arranged by Biden, deep state. Trump staged it himself. That's a good one. I get a good conspiracy theory. I like them. When you're dealing with things that are not an assassination attempt. And make no mistake, that's all this was. People trying to, certain outlets calling it something else. News organizations figuring out what can we say, what can't we say, what should we act like? Because that's the scenario we put ourselves in. The divisiveness that we feel in this country, that's not what's different. And you're being tricked into thinking that's what's different. There has been party and political divisiveness since the democracy was founded hundreds of years ago, and every year since then. The divisiveness that exists now is not the divisiveness that existed before. And that doesn't mean that I'm saying it because there was an assassination attempt. This has been happening, and I don't mean building toward an attempt. I mean building toward a level of discourse that is not intellectual. It's not even helpful. When the mouth opens, the ears close. I used to hear that in school all the time. Something that you have to work on, listening, understanding. I'm not even asking for empathy about a point of view that you don't have about a political issue. You don't have to be empathetic. I live my life just fine not being empathetic. But not having a basic understanding of the rights that we have to not just have our own opinion about political issues, but the rights that we have to support candidates who we support, the rights that we have to hear from the candidates about that which they believe in, what it is that they have the ability to do in a particular office that they're running for. I'm not as interested when I'm looking at the school board elections, what their view is on Roe v. Wade, because, well, that may be an interesting example because there are certain things that they could do or not do in a school as it relates to birth control. But we're live. Let's talk about different offices and what their abilities are. Educating the electorate. These are concepts that we talk about all the time. And for whatever reason, it's gone now. No one wants to learn anything. Everyone simply wants to assume that what they know is true. What happened Saturday night is the worst case of confirmation bias that I have ever seen, because everybody took their point of view, manipulated and maneuvered around the action that happened, and said, look, I've been right the entire time. If you are simply going to try to be right the entire time in order to bolster your own view of your well thought out, potentially educated opinions, then how exactly do you expect to improve? How do you expect to learn? There is no question that the Secret Service is partially culpable. There is no question that security was not the way it should have been. Do you know why people need security? I was thinking about this as I was pondering my anger, frustration, and sadness over the state of our union. And this is not the regular sadness that I'm feeling, actually. It's not about when schools get shot up, when I think about gun control, when I think about the environment, when I think about anything. whatever is bothering me in a particular day. This one felt different to me. It felt different because not that there was one sick, demented man who decided to attempt to kill a presidential candidate who was doing nothing but presidential candidate. Did that really just happen, Coca? I guess it did. Are we back? We're not talking about Trump doing anything out of the ordinary. We're simply talking about him going to a rally, which he has every right to do. Whether you would think or not think that he's preaching to the choir, not relevant. Most rallies are that. The purpose of debates is supposed to be education of platform where we are. The purpose of the RNC and the DNC is to put forward a candidate and to hear what the platform is for that particular party at that particular time. Of course, very many of the basic principles of each party are the same every 4 years. Presidential debates are over the same subjects every 4 years. You can go back and study the debates and know this. It doesn't matter whether the dead assassin was a registered Republican, a registered Democrat. It doesn't matter whether or not there were women guarding him or men, whether or not they should have stood Trump up, which they shouldn't have, whether or not we give unbelievable credit for the state of mind of Trump to raise his fist and provide what will become the iconic picture of this election and well beyond. In the history books, that type of picture goes, the one with the American flag, not the angle that the New York Times chose without the American flag. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about every response on Twitter, every response of people who were on the air. Let me do better than that, Coca. It wasn't everyone. I don't want to blame everybody. So many people thought this was it. It's the perfect moment. There was a man at the rally just minding his business. His head got blown off. Donald Trump came an inch away from his head getting blown off. And yet people are taking their time on social media and other places to make sure that we realize what the conspiracies are, what people in the audience were doing, who's got a phone, who doesn't, who's looking around as though they expected, which way Trump's head is going. It's all levels of this confirmation bias. So where do we go from here? Right now, the RNC is going on in Milwaukee. It starts today. Trump will give a speech on Thursday. Biden, if you watched him at 8 o'clock last night, in 7 minutes, doing what is a president needs to do. And you can say what you want about his health, about his age, about his ability, about his beliefs. A sitting president at that moment, his job is to calm everyone down. A leader leads in times of trouble by being a leader, by lowering the volume, by explaining the sides to each other. Are there times when violence is required as a leader? Protection? Advancement? Yes. Yesterday was not that time. Yesterday was the time for calmness. Yesterday was the time for education. Yesterday was the time to make people understand that their reaction to this is so off base that it's going to get us further and further away from where we're trying to get to, unless, of course, we're all trying to get to a different place. I want to finish by saying the following. The only logical conclusion to the assassination attempt that we saw Saturday night, and to the reactions after, and to the scores of people and their inappropriate behavior since that, is that we've got all very different goals of a finish line. It used to be that we all had the same finish line that we were aiming toward, and we just had different routes to get there. That's the kind of discourse that I love. Show me a better path to get to where we both want to go. Teach me a better way to think about an issue, a scenario, a circumstance, because we're both going to the same place. It occurs to me that we're not any longer. It should be easy to define which America we want, which country we want, simply by comparison. It's not that the United States is the only country in the world. Look around. Find me a country you want to be. I want to send out my feelings and thoughts to people listening. I want to thank you. And I hope that when you're told to think about and give thoughts and prayers and think about the person who died in the assassination attempt, I hope that you give just as much thought to what you do to contribute to either one finish line or multiple finish lines. I did watch sports yesterday. There's no doubt. I started with the Wimbledon final. I watched the Euro final. I watched the Copa final. In between, watched some baseball games at the same time, actually. Ran a stadium for 6 years from 2012 to 2017 and 2 years in 2000 and 2001. From 2002 to 2011, I was a tenant at Hard Rock Stadium. The Dolphins were in charge of stadium operations. I was very involved in it with our stadium operations people because at the end of the day, anything that goes wrong at a Marlins game, while publicly I used to like to say, hey, that's not us. We don't do concessions. We don't get corporate sales revenue. It's the Dolphins. It's the Dolphins. I was always trying to blame everybody but myself. And the truth is that in a disagreement, we would lose between the Marlins and the Dolphins because the Dolphins were the landlords. We were the tenants, which is why we wanted our own building where we could be in charge. I love the control. I love being in charge. I want to be in charge. I demand it. I want to be blamed if things don't go well. And I want to have the option to give the credit to someone else if things do go well, or take it for myself, or share it. I'm getting ready to watch the game, which was supposed to have an 8 p.m. kickoff. And someone texted me that it's an 8:30 kickoff now because Biden is giving a speech from the Oval Office. No problem. I go and watch the speech from 8:00 to 8:07, and I had not yet heard about what was going on. And then I went on X and saw that the Copa tournament was delayed, the kickoff until 8:30, not because of a presidential address, but because there had been a security breach at Hard Rock Stadium. There had been safety issues. And then, like an airplane at an airport, which is enough to drive anyone insane, where they give you multiple delays in 15-minute increments, the game was going to start at 8:45 and then 9:15. And kickoff eventually happened at 9:22. I'm not going to say one word about what happened on the field during the 124 minutes of action. I'm going to focus on something that will get a lot of attention going forward. And I am more than happy to tell you when I'm wrong, when I give you a wait to see, when I think about things that are going to happen. I gave a lot of thought to this Copa final after what happened in the semifinal when it was basically Malice at the Palace Part 2. Families feeling unsafe, players going into the stands, fighting. And I told you that Stephen Ross will not put up with it. I did a show where I took a very strong position that there is no scenario where families will in any way feel endangered. They will be fully secured inside Hard Rock Stadium. Holy cow, was I wrong. I was wrong in a way that I didn't contemplate being wrong. I figured if I'm going to be wrong, it means that someone is yelling at them and doesn't get escorted out for whatever reason, or someone throws soda or popcorn or does something in that section and that it would get attention because players would notice and then there'd be statements. So that was the only scenario that I figured I'd get wrong. It never occurred to me that people would breach the gates and climb through vents to get into the game. It wouldn't occur to me that there would be stampedes. It wouldn't occur to me that this was ultra with people climbing over fences in order to gain access. Even at ultra, when you climb fences to gain access, you still have to go through security. People still will find you. What happened at Hard Rock yesterday with people climbing and wilding and people destroying property. Look at the video if you're watching on the YouTube channel, Nothing Personal with David Samson. That's a stampede where there's nothing the police can do but try to save children and arrest as many people as they can. And then they gave up. I've been in meetings where there is something that happens on a game day that you don't plan for. We've had scenarios where we plan for it. We've had I am really trying to think of the word right now. It's shooter scenarios where you rehearse. Here's what we're going to do. Here's where we go. One thing that we did not do for Marlins games was prepare for what would happen if more than 20,000 people above a sellout would come to Marlins Park. Even during the World Baseball Classic, we would prepare for sellouts. We would prepare differently for World Baseball Classic events or for Guns N' Roses concerts than we would for a Tuesday Marlins game in August, 20 games back. I don't care whether you are a fan of CONMEBOL, whether you're a fan of CONCACAF. I don't care anything other than the responsibility for security rests on the police department of Miami Gardens, the city of Miami-Dade, the county of Miami-Dade, and Hard Rock Stadium. Whatever is being fed to you that says, hey, they took over, we had nothing to do with it, we don't know anything, is absolute horse hockey. You do not give over your ballpark or stadium. I don't care if someone rents the whole thing out for a bar mitzvah and brings in their own bathroom security. If you know, you know. In the beginning, last night when this was happening, there was a lot of finger pointing. And I want to give Hard Rock credit for taking full responsibility. While they did say the venue worked in collaboration with the two organizations, the fact of the matter is they recognize in their statement that at the end of the day, they are responsible. They called out the criminal behavior of so many fans. This is not about immigration. This is not about diversity. This is not about language. This is not about Colombia. This is not about Argentina. The expectation of fan behavior in the United States is different. Much like we talked about when the show started, the expectations of how we behave in a political campaign better be different unless you have found a different and better finish line. The finish line for a sporting event is to get fans into their seats the correct seats safely, expediently, and starting the game on time. It's a pretty simple 3-point plan. None of those things happened. Doesn't matter what the demographics were. Do you believe for 1 second that Hard Rock Stadium did not have meetings about the Copa final as it related to security in the same way that you have to have meetings and present proposals in order to host World Cup games, F1 events, tennis tournaments, Cirque du Soleil? There are meetings that take place with local authorities. There are meetings that take place with your operations department, with your security, with your game day security. You have plans in place at different gates. You know where the ingress pressure points are. You've studied it. You cannot be surprised at an event. It's a rule that we would have a John Pieper rule. For all you law students out there studying for the bar, Pieper People Pass. The rule is that if you believe that there will be people coming onto your property who are unticketed, you either create a Fear the Deer section, a watch party, or you do what Hard Rock did, which is announce there will not be a watch party. If you're not ticketed and you don't have tickets, do not come to Hard Rock. But if you do that, you change your perimeter to the outside of the parking gates. There is no use to make that statement to say that ticketed fans aren't allowed and only check tickets right at the entrance to the facility. You have to then check tickets twice. And it will cause backups, and you meet with local police and you go through traffic patterns and you get the word out on social media and other ways. Come early. There will be lines. You open the gates hours earlier in order to try to get people to arrive at different times. This is not reinventing the wheel. And it broke last night. The destruction of property, the videos I saw on Twitter of people stealing huge vats of popcorn. Now you all know how popcorn gets into a ballpark in huge baggies. It's not great. There's a Twitter video of people just throwing the popcorn around. Believe me, you can't buy it like that. The pictures of people gaining access into the stadium. The picture of the stadium when the game started of no aisles. Who pressured that game into starting at 9:22? There's not a scenario under which that game should have started at 9:22. A plane can't leave the gate with people sitting in the aisle. There were no aisles. God forbid there was a medical emergency, an actual emergency. People had tickets to the event and could not access it because the only thing they could do was secure the perimeter was to close the stadium because they were a capacity with people without tickets. Therefore, people with tickets, and there was a lot of talk of the get-in price, $2,000, did not get in. Hard Rock in their statement said that will be addressed individual by individual basis. NGE, not good enough. It is very reasonable for you to worry about hosting World Cup events. Petrifying to me thinking about World Baseball Classic. I want to bring up the video again. Oh, thank you, Matt. Thank you. People climbing through vents, folks, over fences, ruining escalators. Who thinks that that is the way to behave? Oh, it's passionate soccer fans. That's how you want to excuse behavior? Is that your finish line? That you love to see this? when you're doing it and you're storming a building or in a sporting event, is that because you're trying to exhibit your loyalty? Is it crowd behavior? Hey, they're doing it, I'll do it. World wars start that way. He's doing it, I might as well do it. I don't even know what we're doing, but I'll follow what he's doing. This was not a great weekend. It was supposed to be such a great weekend for us. So many amazingly interesting sports and sports business stories. I still watch the movie every day. All right, Coca, we're going to take a break. Thank you. When we come back, we're going to review a series that I watched. And then tonight, the show will go on. There will be a home run derby. I have some funny things that you should know before you watch. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Samson. Thank you for your time always. Thank you for last week. We had a hell of a week doing our show with Coca, Sarah. Then we did Levitard. Somehow you guys handled 5 hours with me every day. So thank you for that. How I have time to watch movies, we talked about that Friday. Or series. There's a series called Me on Apple TV. It's a 10-part series, about 20 to 25-minute episodes. It flies by. It's a very bizarre series, but Apple TV Plus has earned my benefit of every doubt. It's sort of a science fiction-y series, but I didn't take it that way. I took it as a series about belonging, a series about being bullied, a series about how to fit in to middle school. The modern day John Hughes movie. Very bizarre premise where there are people who have these superpowers and people want the superpowers from the other people. And then someone has a superpower that he doesn't know he has. And then he discovers he has it. And then he tries to figure out what to do with it. And then there's a redemption arc in the last few episodes. You're welcome. I just saved you from 10 episodes of Me on Apple TV. It put the M in mediocre. It put the I in distraction. But it sort of put the A in waste of time. Sorry, but there you have it. Let's go Nothing Personal pick of the day now, please. On Friday, we had the Tigers beating the Dodgers, and the Dodgers that's the only game they won of that series, and they had a score in the 8th and 9th. They ended up beating Tarek Skubal. But on Saturday, Evaldi and the Rangers beat the Astros, except that had to wait for extra innings, but they did win 2-1. So to make a long story short, not that long, not even a minute, we split our Nothing Personal pick of the day. We are 91 and 102, and we have no pick for tonight. We do have, however, a home run derby. I love the home run derby. In 2017, when we hosted the All-Star game, the stress of that I will not forget. But the home run derby sticks out to me way more than the actual All-Star game, which I believe ended in extra innings. That is actually disappointing that I do not remember the exact box score of our own All-Star game. Though for whatever reason, I want to think that Robinson Cano had a game-winning hit. Coke, I'm not asking you to look it out, but you could. But the home run derby with Sanchez and Bohr and Judge and Stanton, loved it. For New York Mets fans, you ought to be jacked up. Are you excited to see Pete Alonso? You know how that conversation went. Hey, Pete, we need you to do the All-Star Derby. Hey, no problem. Make me an All-Star. Well, you're not really an All-Star. Yeah, I know. But then I'm not doing the Derby. Do you think that conversation happened? There's talk of it happening. Let me bring you inside how the home run derby participants are asked. They start at the top. They want Soto. They want Judge. They want Ohtani. And the reason MLB wants it is that it's really good for the broadcast partner, really good for numbers. It's like wanting Curry to do your three-point shooting contest or wanting Jordan to do your dunk contest. You want the best. So MLB internally makes a list. They can't get players to do the home run derby because of the home run derby curse, which we studied. We did some analytics on, and it's absolute hogwash. Are there examples of players who had worse second halves after the derby? Of course there are. Is it because of the derby? No. Do you get tired? I've spoken to players who participated in it. Yes, it is tiring. No, it does not change your swing when the games start the following Friday. Baseball's a weird sport. Sometimes you had 34 home runs before the break and you set a record and your name is Aaron Judge and you're HO triple T. Sometimes your power just poof disappears. Sometimes you can't get hits. Sometimes you go 0 for 20. Go down the list. Let's teach some people about our young superstars. Let's see if Gunnar Henderson will do it. Gunnar, any interest? Of course. Players have a thing about not doing the home run derby unless they're all-stars or the home run derby is happening at their home park, which is why Adolis Garcia is going to be in the home run derby tonight. Do you know why? It has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with being an all-star. They don't want to schlep to the site of the all-star game and then have to leave right after the derby, or just they're not going to be a fan and sit in the stands. They're not allowed in the dugout. So they got to fly in, they fly out. It's disrupting to your personal life, your family life, and the money is good enough and increased in the recent collective bargaining agreement. But for the guys who are the people you want to see, the money is not dispositive. For players at the minimum, the money is meaningful. For players who need some sort of rehabilitation, personal or otherwise, Marcell Ozuna, also an all-star. There is no scenario under which Pete Alonso is going to be an all-star this year. But MLB, I assure you, made the decision that it'd be better to put him on the team in order to have him do the derby. If you think that Alonso was named an all-star without having committed to doing the derby, wink, wink, you may have the timing wrong of the information flow. MLB's taking some criticism for Ozuna. MLB's view of certain players is that when you serve your time, you no longer are subject to different treatment or punishment of any kind. To which the Trevor Bauer fans say that's not true. To which baseball says, we have nothing to do with the fact that Bauer's not playing. Teams can sign him. He's not on the restricted list. He served his suspension. He's in good standing as far as we're concerned. He just can't find a job. Wink, wink. Don't worry, football fans and hockey fans and basketball fans. Your commissioner's office is just as involved and manipulative. Sometimes you just can hide it better than other times. The Dodgers are pretty disappointing this year. I thought they've got a good division lead, but I clearly thought they would not be better, but you all did. Many of the scenarios, simulations, preseason predictions, Dodgers, like Marsha frickin' Brady. I cautioned you to tell you that they had no depth in their pitching staff or in their lineup. Teoscar Hernandez has been a fantastic addition. And my prediction is he actually wins the home run derby tonight. Enjoy it. Something else happened prior to Saturday at 6:19 p.m. that I assumed would lead the show and was in the lead. It lost the lead during the course of the weekend. I didn't mention it at the top of the show because I wanted to know whether you have forgotten about it. Do you remember when Jalen Brunson re-signed with the Knicks on a 4-year, $156.5 million deal? Do you remember the wait to see that I had on July 9th, only 6 days ago, that there is no scenario that Jalen Brunson will sign for 156 when he can sign for 269 a year from now? Well, like other wait to sees, when I'm wrong, and I will let you know. Holy cow, was I wrong. Not only did Jalen Brunson sign a 4-year deal at 156, but then he was made to be a deity because he and his agent presented it as though what they're doing is trying to be Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, LeBron James, and other people they perceive to not take their full value in order to give their team flexibility in order to win a championship. Jalen, I'm so thankful to you. But do you really think that I'm buying that for 1 New York minute? I want the Knicks to win a title more than you could possibly know. You don't give up $100 million because it is your view that by giving the team the cap savings of 12 million, 13 million, 18 million, opening the door more than ajar, that somehow you're doing it because of your love of team, city, game. It's quite a family affair with Jalen Brunson, always has been. His father's an assistant coach with the Knicks, former player. I watched him play. Yep, I did. His agent is in the same family as the team president. Just keep that in mind. There's a lot of incestuous behavior that has taken place with Jaylen Brown, and I don't mean the kind that's a crime. I mean the kind that makes me question, who are we after? Did I not say Brunson? I'm sorry, Coca. I went up to players so many times in my career and asked for a discount in order to have money. Help me with deferrals. Help me have you outperform your contract by taking less. I can't find a player who willingly does that. And I'm not buying it for Brady or Jeter or LeBron. And you know my view of LeBron and what he did with his contract. Do you think there's a situation where Jalen Brunson sat down and said to himself, bird in the hand, two in the bush argument? Do you think he thought about being injured? Do you think he thought about lack of performance? Do you think he thought about the state of the NBA? Do you think that the only thing the players have been told is that with the increased broadcast revenue, which is going to $76 billion and is a triple, is there a thought that with the cap going up, that no matter what, you are getting more? It's not how the conversations actually go, because when your salary cap goes up, there are certain players, and you already hear a conversation about a kid drafted today could sign a 5-year deal for $100 million a year in 5 years, all the different math that we can do. But when you have a chance to make $150 million versus $270 million, the thought process is more based on your ability, your injuries, the way your body feels, your risk tolerance. Do you think that Leon Rose went to his son, Sam Rose, and went through the scenarios of the salary cap and said, listen, do me a favor. We got to get Jalen to sign for this 156 right now, because by doing that, that really helps our team. And then do you think that Sam Rose went to Jalen Brunson and explained that to him? And Jalen Brunson said, great, I'm in. Let's keep the Villanova people together. This makes perfect sense. You think that's how an agent is supposed to take care of his player? Never an agent that I've heard of. Thank you, Jalen. Thanks for taking the discount. Thanks for putting the Knicks first. Time will tell, because either you are and your agent is culpable for his behavior, or you are not the type of player I thought you were. Or you're playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers. This is pretty binary. One of those things is going to be true. We'll find out. Can we talk about one other thing with baseball, Coco, before we leave in the last 4 minutes? And then I want to go back to something. I meant to bring up to you this Cincinnati Reds player. During the break, you can go ahead and watch the All-Star game and the Derby and get ready for Friday when games start again. There's a bunch of teams in the race. It's going to be an exciting rest of July. We've got the trade deadline July 30th. Then you get the final 2 months of the season, the final third. We start getting into the early part of being late. I love it when young players come up and make history. Rhys Hines is on fire, that Cincinnati Reds player. Did you see that? He did go 0 for 4 on Sunday, but you saw him get, like, in 6 days, he had 9 extra base hits and 5 home runs, and no one's ever had a 6-day span at any point in his career like his 6 days, where he had home runs, and one game he got 3 types of extra base hits. He had a grand slam. He had a multi-homer game. So he did stuff that you just don't see. People in New York are excited about their first baseman. Sorry, Anthony Rizzo. You've been Wally pipped. Ben Rice is there. How do you know Ben Rice isn't Kevin Moss or Abraham Nunez? People who talk about baseball tend to look at small sample sizes and do a lot of extrapolating. People who are inside front offices don't do that. They do projecting. They do downright wishing and hoping for reversion and regression to the mean both ways. But no one after day one, when a player hits a home run, says, look, he's going to get 162 home runs. Nobody does that. But if you haven't seen Hines, you should watch him play because it's pretty cool. The entire show will have passed, and we will not have been able to properly eulogize Dr. Ruth Westheimer, who I wanted to do and talk about, forging a path as a Holocaust survivor that was brand new, talking about sex in a way that no one did, certainly as a diminutive, amazing woman and Holocaust survivor. I want to end the show, though, in the final minute by reiterating a question that I hope you've been thinking about for 50, and I've been thinking about for way more than 50 minutes. I've asked you this before on the show, is what can you do to effectuate change? The helplessness that people feel, the apathy, or just the memory where something happens and then it ends. My question is this. When we ask and suggest that live and let live be a philosophy that you ponder, when you think about live and let live, is that let live like breathe? Or was it live and let live and act? It was always meant for act and actions, not for breathing. It didn't occur to me that I would have to say live and let live actually meant don't kill people, don't shoot people. Which live and let live do you believe in? Which finish line do you believe in? At least give it thought. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition of Nothing Personal. I promise you that you can count on that. This is not a lot of business today, and this was wholly personal for all of us.